Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you for joining us. We're a couple minutes off the start time. So just wanted to welcome you all. Let you know if your microphone is not muted, please do so. You can use the question or chat feature in GoToWebinar to get us any comments or questions that you would like. And that's what we have right now. I'll do a little bit more of an introduction when we hit the top of the hour, but welcome and get ready. We're excited for this afternoon's presentation. Yay! My clock says 1 o'clock, so we're gonna go by that. As I said, good afternoon, everybody. It's a small group, but I'm sure some other people will join us as we get started. Welcome to this afternoon's, okay, now I forgot the word. Welcome to this afternoon's webinar. It's part of what I affectionately call our Catholic Publishing Summer School, which is in lieu of our in-person annual membership meeting. So our presenters today, Rob and Dan, were gracious enough to kind of make the switch from an in-person setting to the webinar setting. And so that is what we are about to launch into just a moment or two. A couple of housekeeping comments. If you have questions or comments to make, please feel free to use the question or chat feature in your attendee area. I will be monitoring that throughout. There will be a few polls, so get ready to respond when those come up. We did have some technical difficulties yesterday. If that does happen, I will probably try to communicate that through chat since that was still working yesterday. I don't anticipate that, but you know, we had that issue yesterday, so we want to make sure that we have a way of handling it today. Well, so without further ado, I'm going to briefly introduce you to Rob and Dan and let them take over. As I said, today's session is on fulfillment and inventory, and we have our new friends, Rob Schmidt and Dan Loomis, to lead our conversation today. I'm going to hand it over to them and talk to you later on the other end.
Good. Excellent. Well, thank you, Therese. A little bit about the presenters. Rob Schmidt, who's a sales representative with Royle Printing, and myself, Dan Loomis, the Director of Market Development with Omnipress. We're certainly excited to be here today and share our experiences. We're not experts in everything, but we've got a lot of knowledge in the print and fulfillment industry, and really just want to be able to share our experience with you. And so hopefully some of the things that we talk about, you can tie into and correlate to some of the things that you do. So first off, I'm going to start with introduction, let Rob give you a real quick overview of who he is.
Yeah, good afternoon, everyone. Yeah, this is Rob Schmidt. If you were on yesterday, you learned a little bit about me and some of the print side of things that I'm more involved with, but excited to be supporting Dan today. On my end, again, a father of 5 children. I was past president of our congregation and also on a council for 6 years. I bring that up only because I think that plays a little bit of a role in understanding some of the member base and who you're trying to reach with your materials. I started at Royle Printing in April of 1988. Yesterday, you may have learned, but Dan and I have a unique starting date. We both started with our companies in 1988 and in April. So some coincidences, and still living in the same town. So 32 years of experience. 32 years of experience between both of us, 64 years. So we hope we can bring some value today. I work for Royle Printing. Our company in Sun Prairie, Wisconsin was established in 1948. And it's an independently owned business and a growing printing company, which is a unique thing today. We've supported mostly on our end publishers and catalogers, and we handle all of their print and then mailing services as well. And then the majority of our work is going to be over a 5,000 quantity print run, so we may reach a different audience, but it's still ink on paper, and most of what we do is in a heat set web variety. So that's a little bit about myself and Royle Printing. Dan?
Well, thank you, Rob, for joining today. Your 32 years of experience is greatly appreciated. Lend a voice and share some experiences here on this webinar. As Rob mentioned, we both have been at our businesses for 32 years, kind of opposite ends of the spectrum. And we'll talk a little bit about that. But before we go, I guess before work, there is life. And I feel completely honored and blessed to be married to my 28-year-old high school sweetheart. We have 2 adult children, 20 and 24. Absolutely loving kids. And it's been such a dream having them outside of home. It's work related. I have been previous and members of ASAE and ATD, which really focus on the association arena as well as the training and development. So as we mentioned, I've been employed at Omnipress here in Madison for the past 32 years. Omnipress helps more than 500 associations, homeschoolers, and even some corporations deliver educational content each year. So that's really in the forms of printed books on the publication division, as well as instructor-led training courses. So we supply manuals and course books and all of the items needed for instructor-led training courses, as well as the association's annual conferences. So I'm hoping to bring some of that experience that I have, and it's not always the most exciting topic to think about is fulfillment and inventory, but it's something that I'm very passionate about. I get extremely excited about talking about not just the process of what it is, but really the higher purpose of what's going on. It's not a book in a package. It's really about delivering that educational content and the value to the end user. And I feel extremely honored to be a part of that stuff. At Omnipress, we focus on short run quantity under 5,000 quantity, where Rob and Royle Printing focus on the 5,000 plus quantity. We also have fulfillment services that we deliver throughout the entire United States, as well as 250 different countries internationally. So we're hoping that our experience and what we do, Rob much more on the catalog side of things, and I am much more on the book side of things in the short run. So hopefully we can share those experiences that you can take with you leaving here today. So kind of a real quick session overview. We're going to jump into it. We got a lot to cover today. We're going to try to keep you engaged and excited through some polls and surveys, and also some good content, and hopefully some things that you've not been a part of or heard before. So we're going to, before we think about inventory and fulfillment, we're going to talk about a few print and inventory models. We're going to get into the order fulfillment and distribution end of things and some challenges. And we're going to talk about managing distribution costs. And then what I find is the most important topic that people seem really interested in is, what are other associations doing? What can we learn from each other? I think that is extremely important. So our hope is that you experience just at least one aha moment. And it might be something little, it might be something great, but hopefully it takes you that extra second where you think, yeah, I'm gonna look at this, I'm gonna consider that, and really reach out and start having those conversations.
Mm-hmm. We had a few of those aha moments our own when we had our conversation, Dan. So absolutely, those are important points to try and just find. We aren't going to bring all that knowledge and what we have going to catch everybody right, but definitely hope that we bring some good ideas once we're done with this presentation.
Yeah, excellent. Well, we're going to jump right into it, and we're going to have a poll. And really, it's just a question I'm kind of interested in. What's your average print run per publication title? And so for me, it's really on the book side of things. Rob, I know you guys are much more on journals and catalogs, but just answer it from whatever perspective that you're in, and so I can get a sense of kind of maybe who's on today and discuss some of that. Rob, what do you guys find for average print runs, or is it just really a variable because they're such a large quantity?
Yeah, I mean, our average, let's call it a sweet spot for us. I'm going to say that runs that are over 10,000 in quantity, up to 75,000 have been proven to be our greater strength on our side. Again, because of the heat set web, your make ready cost, your setup opportunities. That's where we're going to run from our option on our end. So,
Okay.
Dan, you guys run a much smaller platform.
Yeah,
Dan?
our stuff is,
Oh.
Yep. Go ahead,
Dan,
Tree.
the results, 100% said between 101 to 3,000.
Okay.
Okay.
Perfect.
Excellent. Excellent. So that's certainly, I'm not sure what's happened on this web. Is everybody else seeing that? Maybe I can scoot her up there. Okay. So, well, that's good, because that's really in the sweet spot of kind of what I wanted to talk about today. And I know everybody's familiar with print and inventory models. Rob, I know you guys are very familiar with that. It really doesn't matter if the quantity is 500 or 50,000. There's a lot of publications that are printed and stored in inventory. Everybody understands can challenge cash flow for the organization at times, but there's so much upside. You get the best price per unit. So in many cases, it makes sense. It's the best model available.
Exactly. No, I agree. And you do a nice job with those models, and the people that are listening fit into your industry and your side of the business. So look forward to hearing that. Yep.
Yeah. So, essentially, if it's not a print and inventory, what happens in publications and the experience that I have at working with so many associations, I understand the life cycle of a publication, and it can vary. It can vary from 1 year to 5 years to many more years, depending on the content of what it is. But I do know that sometimes the inventory model doesn't work because the life cycle is changing and sales and demand is going down. So associations turn to print on demand, but they're challenged with that high cost of printing. And sometimes you're limited to book sizes when you do a one-off on-demand situation. And sometimes you're really limited with binding options. So for example, showing here like a church hymnal, with a case-bound book, you're not gonna have the option to do a print-on-demand model. Not that you would for a hymnal, but just in theory, a case-bound wouldn't be available at 20 quantity. So you have some limitations there. I know in the publication arena and publishers, there's a lot of other various royalty models. We've been asked at times to print for free and then provide a certain percentage of sales back to the organization, and we keep the rest. And then there's Amazon, and that's a whole nother level that I'm not going to get in today. I just really looking at the kinds of models that are out there. And sometimes there's a lot of challenges with these models. There's not always one size that kind of fits all. But I think I might have an option or a solution for some of you. But before we do that, I just had another kind of quick poll. Have you ever heard of the Pareto principle? And Rob, you can participate in this as well if you'd like.
There we go. Yeah, no, I mean, and we shared that, and as we've gone through this whole process, and it's a principle once I probably hearing it of name, no, but as a business model and in various other organizational, committees that I've been on, it's definitely something that we've used.
Yeah, most people don't know it by name, but I'll expose what it's more commonly known as when Therese shows us the poll results.
I think I'm going to just have to tell you the poll results.
Okay.
25% said yes, 75% said no.
Okay. Well, that's better than I thought. I mean, it's not always something that's common. And so essentially, the Pareto principle is the 80-20 rule. And if you do leadership training or you look at financial things, there's a lot of different things tied to an 80-20 rule, time management and all those things. And so really what I wanted to share here is that not all publications are created equal, in meaning that a lot of times what I find is that most associations have 2 to 5 or 20% of their flagship publication titles, and 80% kind of fall underneath a different category, where that 20% is probably bringing in 80% of the revenue. And it might be a 90-10, a 70-30. You're going to find a different variance there, but generally it's close to an 80-20. And it might even be the case at home in life, or even in volunteering. You notice that 20% of the people are providing 80% of the help. And so it's really super interesting. So the 80-20 rule, Pareto principle, just to, I guess, maybe give somebody an idea of what that really is. It was an Italian economist who noticed that 80% of the land in Italy was owned by 20% of the people, and that's how the 80-20 rule was kind of developed. But back to the publications. So you have publications at 20% for your flagship titles, producing 80% of that revenue. Many people utilize that inventory, print and inventory model, because it makes sense. You get a great price per unit. And then they manage the other ones with a print on demand type of situation. What we've developed at Omnipress is really kind of a twist in the just-in-time inventory model. And for those who don't know that, it's really about a micro inventory is printed and placed into inventory. And there are some printing companies that will offer that, but not quite like Omnipress, where we're going to manage that risk of the micro inventory. So we determine the print quality or quantity of that micro inventory. So we use your sales data and analytics, and we look at historical sales and we look at current sales, and we try to estimate, and we take the risk of producing that micro inventory. So you don't have to think about that. And then the printing cost is invoiced at the end of the month for the publication orders that are shipped. So that means you don't have any money up front with that inventory, and you don't pay that high price per unit for the print on demand. And I'll talk about a little bit of an example just to show you the pricing and the cost aspect of things real carefully.
Hey, Dan, so you were in when we spoke and shared some conversation about this presentation. You were integral in making some of the decisions for Omnipress. It was kind of a process of bringing something new to market for your organization that would give your customers a way to manage inventory, correct?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's always hard to talk about yourself and the things that you've done and you do, but I have been a big part of that. It was something that I recognized, and obviously our company had to embrace it, but it was really all about trying to, work around those challenges with inventory and fulfillment. And how do you the print and inventory model, there was cash flow issues. People were really struggling with unpredictability of their other publications, and so they would go on demand, but they were frustrated with the prices that they had to pay for a print on demand costing unit. So yeah, really just sat down and thought about, well, how can we help? And so that's what we deployed. And I find that even depending on your publication, it could be your flagship publication, even this just-in-time inventory model works for the flagship publication. So I have associations that use it exclusively, and I have some that just use it on some of their lower volume. It really is depending on the specifications and the needs of the organization. So thank you, Rob, for pointing that out and giving kudos. It was a lot of work and a lot of energy put into deciding that.
Right. You got some good examples. I'll let you continue on.
Yeah, thank you. So here's just a real quick example, and these numbers are not necessarily real, but for example, if you did a print and inventory of 500 quantity printed, but you only sold 425, your cost, let's say we use the $4 per unit times your 500 print run, everything's paid in front up full. So the association or the organization has taken responsibility for that inventory. Like most people, guessing the exact quantity doesn't always happen. So In this example, we're disposing of 75, essentially $300 worth of inventory. And then going to a print on demand model just doesn't make sense. And here I've got it represented as 4 times the amount. And it may not be 4 times the amount. It may be a $10 book, a $12 book, or $16 book. But at the end of the day, you're going to be paying substantially more. And I've seen excess inventory, 75 quantity is pretty light. We've had organizations that have transitioned to Omnipress with an inventory, print and inventory model, and it's just, they've disposed of $50,000, $60,000 worth of merchandise. And when you come from a small print run organization, that is a tremendous amount of money, especially when you start thinking about $2,000 you're spent.
Mm-hmm.
So the just-in-time model, the Omnipress method, the way we deploy it is in a kind of a side-by-side comparison. Instead of that $4, it might be a $6 per unit times what you've actually sold, the $4.25, and you do pay a little bit more, about $250 more. But at the end of the day, the problems that it solves is really all of that risk of excess inventory, cash flow, that headache of managing those print runs per publication titles. We assign a project manager to help you through that particular need. It opens up the possibilities of frequent content changes and revisions, or at least more frequent than you had before. And then the possibilities of returning to those higher quality binding options. So to me, it's really been an important new printing method that we've really deployed into the industry. And I don't know if others are seeing that, but I would certainly be curious. And I've created another poll here, Therese, just to see if anybody else is using a similar method.
Mm-hmm. Question.
Rob, I assume at the levels you guys dealing with, that really isn't a technique that's been used. This is really mainly for small quantity stuff.
It is, but I mean, we do use it even on our end still, but very rarely. Most people will still produce that larger volume and inventory it. It really depends on page counts of a book, because the make-ready cost and setup costs on a bigger web press is just that much more costly. So it usually turns out in most situations that people will proceed with the full print run.
Yeah, because the price per unit can be so much greater with that. That's a good savings.
Yep.
So maybe this is one of those aha moments we were hoping for. Therese, what did we find?
Unfortunately, we didn't have any participants in this poll.
No worries.
Okay. Well, we're gonna proceed. It's something to certainly consider and look at. Maybe everyone had such an aha moment they're stunned. It's too good to be true, maybe, huh?
Right. There we go.
Alrighty. Well, everything's printed, no matter what method you choose. It could be a print and inventory method. It could be an on-demand. It could be the Omnipress just-in-time method. No matter what, we have to fulfill orders. And what I see on my end through my 30 years of really print and fulfillment and distribution, I see associations and organizations really handling their order fulfillment one of two ways: in-house, utilizing some internal staff, or outsourcing to third-party fulfillment center. It could be centers. I know there are cases where there's multiple centers and they're challenged with moving inventory from location to location. Internally, using that internal staff, I find that a lot of times people are using people from the marketing team as other duties are assigned to help with in-house fulfillment. Others have full in-house capabilities. So there's a variety of ways. I know internally you can struggle with, if your organization decides to go more international, you may have some struggles understanding duties and taxes and shipping, utilizing in-house staff. And so I've seen a variety of ways and challenges that are out there as far as distribution. And so you really have to think about what is right for your organization. But even if it's something you've been doing, maybe it's time to reach out, have a conversation, because I know there is a lot of special reports and things that can solve needs for your FIFO and your accounting teams. So it may be time to maybe look outside for a third party and at least get a perspective if you're doing it in-house. One thing that I find for people doing it in-house too is they're a little bit fearful of, they may not think that their order volume is large enough. They might think, we don't have to outsource it, we don't have enough volume. At Omnipress, we serve a lot of people, a lot of associations who are very small. They might have one order a week. They might have 40 to 50 orders a day. It really kind of depends. So there's definitely options for associations of all sizes. If you're very small, you have a very low order quantity per day, you could look at just placing orders manually through an online portal. If you have a lot of orders, maybe you have system integration from a full automation from an online store directly to fulfillment systems or centers around the country. And then if you're doing things, there could be a batch order or a mail list. Maybe you have a bunch of pre-orders. You've gathered some things in an Excel file that's been exported from one of your registration systems. You know, you can have fulfillment can be handled in that manner as well. So there's a variety of options, but you really have to then think about cost. And I know cost of distribution is a huge thing. And this is where, Rob, I wanted to bring you in and talk a little bit more about some of the mail lists and things that they can do to help with manage some of their cost.
Sure. So a couple of things on the mailing side. And again, Dan, to your side, these numbers that are smaller, those one-off delivery opportunities through UPS or FedEx are probably more commonplace on your end. On our end, we're dealing with the USPS, and most of our stuff is mailing. So a couple of new terms that are out there, just to make you aware of them more than anything. So mail anywhere is a new term if you're not familiar with it. But what that relates to is if you have a mailing indicia that you have with the USPS and you're doing a mailing of any large volume of capacity of letter mail or marketing mail, mail anywhere is where a printer like Royle Printing has that status. And we can take your permit wherever it is originated at, and you don't have to open up a new location for dropping mail out of Madison, Wisconsin, because of our ability to be a mail anywhere provider. So it's a good question to ask your printer. If they are, those are some cost savings that can be there just in dealing with permit information. EPS payment system, there used to be a CAPS payment system, if you're not familiar with that either. Both of those are just an electronic way to transfer funds with the USPS. So it's an ease of moving money, making those postal payments. We don't have to receive a check anymore. If you set up an EPS account with the USPS and have a permit, it's a great way to move funds. There's always a few fear factors that people have in allowing the USPS to withdraw money from their checking account from a business standpoint, but it's very safe. They changed from CAPS to EPS because of future threats of hacks and other things like that. So they made it far more secure and safe from a system standpoint. So it is a great way to handle funds. Bigger scale items, co-mail and co-mingle. Co-mail, if you haven't heard those terms, co-mail will manage your quantities of 5,000 and greater. It's kind of a way of co-oping, coming together as many publishers and catalogers and mailing and getting postal savings. And you're doing that because basically these organizations that create co-mail are more efficient in producing it at a better cost and moving that mail to the closer to the final destination than the USPS is doing, and that generates savings for you. And commingle is taking letters and putting them together again in mass to get that same outcome. to get that distribution of that product closer to the final destination at a less expensive cost than the post office is going to do moving it itself. And then my last item on there is list management. And I talk about list management, it's a hygiene. It's maintaining your list. If you're doing any volume, make sure that there's very good list management done on your end and having it reviewed by your printer, making sure that you're doing NCOA and CAS certification of your list. Those are critical things from a list standpoint.
Yeah, that's right, Rob. And I see a lot of that on, even in our business of the smaller quantities. List management's extremely important, especially if you're sending things out to regular members all the time. You don't want to have repay for that stuff going out and not reaching the destination each
Right.
time, or being returned, and so on and so forth. So that is important, and it obviously much more important when you get over into a large quantity, but still as a percentage, it's still having an effect on your distribution costs for sure.
Absolutely. Well, you got, of course, even just taking a 5,000 print quantity, and if you have just a couple of hundred bad names, those costs of print and postage go into that. And we always encourage people to know that if they have a 100% clean list, which is difficult, but closer to that number by having that situation, those dollars reaching new people versus just returning and not making any impact is a critical part on the list hygiene side.
Yeah.
The other thing on the mail side, this is just kind of a, maybe this is one of those other aha moments, but there's postal incentives, believe it or not. I'm going to just cover two of these real quickly because they're the more common of ones that can be covered, but there's a link on here you can go to check out those postal incentives. The mobile shopping one is probably the easiest and the most common, but if you're sending out a marketing piece and the recipient of that piece has a QR code on it, which is the most common, will allow them to take their phone, hover over that QR code, and then that will take them to a location where they can physically make a purchase of a book of some kind, and or whatever it is that you're promoting or selling. When they can do that, and that's available for them to make that purchase all the way through on their mobile device, those mailers that you send out receive a 2% discount. So it is the USPS. There are a lot of little rules within that. So make sure that you do talk to your printer, the post office, and making sure that you follow some of those guidelines that are there for the mobile shopping. The last one on the list is the informed delivery. It's a unique situation. If you're doing a mailer, a letter mail piece, the USPS scans every piece going to every person that's receiving mail in the United States. I'm signed up for informed delivery. You can get online and you get informed of a scan of every product going into your mailbox. And if you set it up as a marketing incentive, those pieces, those people like myself who are signed up for that visual service of what's showing up in my mailbox, I get a scan of every image. If it's a marketing mailed piece, to receive this discount, it's in 4-color. And if you click on that single mailer, it will take the consumer to your directed website and allow them to go in and then basically get that information, be more informed about the product as it comes into their mailbox. So those are two incentives out there, and if you'd like to learn more about those, I'm more than happy to provide additional information, or that website should help you navigate this process a little further.
Excellent. Thanks, Rob. I know at the end of the day, you have to produce something, and when you distribute something, there's costs associated with it. Obviously, it's about trying to manage those costs as much as possible, and you can use, on the book side of things, we use bound printed matter for one-up deliveries to try to keep things cost effective. Obviously, you can use the worldwide carriers as well, UPS and FedEx, and things get costly. But doing some of these little things can really make a difference. At the end of the day, shipping does cost something. So that gets into really what are other associations doing? And what I find is outside of making those good decisions on the print quantities, their order distribution, how they want to do it, do they want to do it in-house, externally, and managing those costs, they really then try to focus on leveraging their content, increasing the content value, and really looking at brand enhancement. And we'll get into each of those and how we do that. But really the first thing that we focus on with increased content value is what Rob and I talked about yesterday in our Innovations of Print seminar. And Rob, I'm going to have you cover this, but really when we talk about that enhancement, we're really, making that content the best it can really look and adding value to the end user.
Yeah, we do. We really talk about the power of print. That's a key discussion on our end back in 2007 and 8 when we went through a recession. Print seemed to be under fire for the fact that it might be dead. And we really felt strongly that that wasn't the case. So we encouraged all of our different customers through ideas of managing the power of print and bringing and enhancing your piece with some of these other items. So the images you see there, the In Business magazine is a belly band that wraps around the entire piece. There's cover tips that you can get engagement with your readers. They're used for a variety of different things, emphasizing a conference, same thing for the belly band. All of those things are very front and central to the recipient. The Post-it notes, I thought this one on the Gideon did a really nice job just to get engagement again with the reader. And it just says, who are you praying for? And they gave you 3 little line items on there to put different people's names on that list. And then inside, they encouraged you to step in the magazine and just read a little bit more about what they were trying to do in reaching that. And Post-it notes are used for a whole variety of other things. We talked about some unique coatings, Dan, too. So getting creative with those finishes. And I know a lot of books are produced with the soft touch UV coating. It kind of gives you that desire, I think, as we talked about, kind of sit down in the chair and get into that book. But there's other creative coating ideas out there. And and then obviously different paper finishes that are available too as well. And Dan, you kind of have a little bit more of the uniqueness on different binding techniques. I'll let you cover that.
Yeah, so on the book side of things, people are really focusing on that overall appearance as well, and utilizing things like a lay flat binding if they know that their users want to, fold it open and take notes and things of that nature, where it lays a little bit flatter, but yet it has a nice spine presence for a bookshelf, and it looks great. And the other thing, people want to maybe stiffen up that book cover so that it really can kind of withstand the test of time of being used. And so they will use a thick lamination or a double lamination type of situation, or a thick cover, 130 pound. Typically we use a 100-pound cover, but we'll get into a 130-pound cover with a thick lamination, and it really creates a nicer stiff book that's durable. So there's a lot of emphasis on making sure that that printed piece looks really, really good. I mean, it is about the content at the end of the day. Like I said, everything's going to have cost, but you want to choose some of those things that can be cost effective and really enhance your brand and that content with the least amount of impact to your wallet. Rob, did you have anything else to add, or?
No, I think that kind of covers it for that portion. So thank you, Dan.
Okay.
Yeah.
Excellent. A lot of similarities between what's happening in catalogs as well as on the short run end of things.
Absolutely.
So one of the things that associations always want to focus on as well to create and leverage that content is sell bundled content. And what I mean is, you can have multiple printed items go together. An example from like the course or seminar side of things, we send out course books, exam, Post-it notes, highlighters, tent cards, and some of those things are printed, other items are just inventoried, but we sell that as a single bundle or kit. So what that does is it allows you to really look at the overall retail cost of that and sell it for a much higher price, yet provide a lot of value to the end user as well. So that's something that happens on the seminar side of things. Another challenge that I see is, really how do you sell the $4 publication, as they call it? It's a publication that doesn't cost a lot of money. So even if it's mailing, if it's $3-4 to mail it, it's still the same price as to produce it. So organizations have a hard time figuring out a manner to create value for that. If all of the things that we've talked about with enhancing the print or selling in a bundle don't work, perhaps include it for free with the purchase of one of your flagship publications and increase that flagship publication by $4 or $5, or even more if you want to help offset the cost of shipping. That's a pretty common practice that I've seen as well. The other thing is to sell publications of like content together. So if you have publication titles that have similar content, you could group those together as a single purchase item. I see that very commonly as well. So again, focusing on the print quality, making that piece look as good as possible, bundling it together, and then don't forget about the importance of selling that bundle with an online component. I hear so many conversations about print versus online, and you notice in the top of the PowerPoint I have "and" all caps and underlined. Really, it's not about online replacing print and print, replacing online. Sometimes there's just so many different uses and purposes for each one. Rob, I don't know about you, but when I want to look up the sports score, I don't necessarily check a newspaper, even though I'm in the print industry. I like to go online.
Right. Yeah, no, same on those same points. But, we've seen a little bit of a trend on our end just because of COVID, where the magazine side of things, those monthly or bi-monthly type touch points that people have, because businesses are closed and people are at home. In our environment, there was fear that from an advertiser side, more than anything, that the recipient wouldn't get the issue. So online digital books were created for this current situation in the COVID environment, but that was mainly to solve that fear of who was going to receive that, or if it was just going to sit stagnant for a period of time until people return to business. We'll see if those continue. I'm not quite sure where those trends will go.
Yeah, and on the annual conference side of things, and even our continuing education, the courses, we're seeing very similar activities there where everything's gone virtual, but what I've seen is they're offering a printed component to go with it. So even though the person's at home, has access to a virtual event, they're providing the print along with it. So I wanted to remind people is look at those bundles. There's a lot of power between print and online. An example might be provide a free flip book with the purchase of the hard copy book. For us, a flip book is relatively inexpensive way to deliver some content. If you're looking at a material that you want really deep learning and engagement, to me, the print helps with that learning retention better than flipping through the online book. But the combination of the two really provides the end user exactly what they want to have. Maybe they want that experience in both methods. And if you want to get a little bit more fancier, there are online sites that deliver up PDF content. So you could deliver free content, and that might be a chapter or a section or a particular topic online with the purchase of a book as well. So there's all kinds of ways to be creative with the print and online component things, and that's what I'm seeing how people are leveraging content. They're focusing on their printed material, making it look great, they're bundling it, and they're really offering it up in different ways. Additionally, utilize that print. We've talked about this. Here's a very simple example. It's It's not glamorous. It's not 4-color. It's just a printed book, with a QR code, and that links to some content on YouTube. And it's the instructor providing more information about how to provide this or solve this math equation. And doesn't have to be a long video. It can be short segments of micro learning. I think those are really some key areas in how I see people leveraging their content and utilizing that print and online platforms. The other thing is really, we talked about enhanced branding. So now that you've got your content, we talk about branding. I know branded boxes and poly bags, people are familiar. What I find in our industry, branded boxes can be very expensive and a little bit unuseful if you don't have a consistent order, volume and quantity. If you have that, a branded box is a great way to make a big splash for your organization. But you have to make sure you don't have a lot of varying quantities, because otherwise your box size isn't going to fit, and then you're going to have struggles, and everything's not going to go out looking the same. So one of the alternatives is really custom packaging and labels. You see the black and white image there with ISC in it. That is their logo that's printed on a UPS label. Very cost effective. Really, it's a few dollars, and that image goes on every single box. Not a few dollars per box, just a few dollars for setup, and it can be put on every label. Otherwise, you can provide, and we can print 4-color labels, 2-color labels, and it can be adhered to any packaging, whether it's a box, padded envelopes, anything that materials are being shipped out in. Include marketing materials with each order. That's important. A lot of brochures, and utilize things that cross-promote courses and annual conferences. The publication team doesn't have to be the only one trying to sell publications, and the course team doesn't have to be the only one selling courses. So really utilize all the content across your organization. That's really the point. And, include a thank you card. When was the last time you've gotten a package, Rob, for a thank you card in it?
Well, I have a wonderful sales rep. I know you asked me that today, my perfect timing, who's on our team. And today in my inbox, I had a nice handwritten letter from one of our sales reps. We do encourage that on our end too, to put that handwritten note in there. It's just a good personal touch, but it's always neat to receive that from somebody else out in the marketplace. So I think that's just a great way to give a good touch.
Yeah, and I think if you're looking for a cost-effective way to do that thank you card, you don't have to go with additional folding and cutting. Just go with a 5x7 or a 6x9 piece of paper, a cover stock with a full bleed on it with color, 4-color. Looks wonderful, and it's really cost effective, and it just gets added in and inserted in every single package. So to me, it's a great representation of your brand, nice personal touch. Those are the things that, as members of organizations, and that's what I love, and I think everybody else really appreciates that kind of stuff. So that kind of concludes most of the seminar, or the key takeaways. We talked a little bit about printing. Hopefully you walked away with potentially a new method to explore. Think about distribution being an extension of your brand, which we just talked about. Every package going out the door, it's more than just a package. It's not a book. It's really about delivering on your organization's mission and helping educate the world. You're providing an excellent service. Make that distribution represent exactly what you stand for. Leverage all that great content that you have. Utilize those platforms, print and online. It's not an and or. Utilize them. They're there. People use them. People love them. Utilize that content as much as you can. And just most importantly, what Rob and I really want to stress is, you're not alone in this. Many associations and many organizations have similar challenges. Reach out to Rob and I, reach out to others in the industry, just have conversations. Things change, and sometimes not always frequently in the printing world. Things do take some time, but there's always new ideas and new ways and things that are coming out. As you can see from our seminar today, printing is still print, but a new way to look at a method is available. Leveraging that content that you have, managing distribution costs are always things that you're going to be challenged with. But there's people there to help. And Rob and I, we'd love to have the conversation. So hopefully today, we just hope you had one of these aha moments.
Exactly. Thank you, Dan. That was great.
Rob, did you have an aha moment today?
Oh, you know it. No, it was great. Thank you. I enjoyed that. And Teresa, thank you for allowing us to participate in this. We've enjoyed preparing each of those sessions. And if there's some questions, Dan, I know would love to field those questions if they come in now or follow in afterwards. We've got contact information for anyone to jump in and share some of your thoughts as an opportunity there.
Thank you both, Rob and Dan. If anyone does have any questions, please feel free to type those in now. If not, the video of this broadcast will be available at the ACP website, and I am going to take you there so you can see that. This section of the ACP website, under webinars, as you'll see, the previous webinars on graphic design and innovations in print are there, as well as one on evolution of work in disruptive times. They will all be found there, as well as the ACP YouTube channel, where you can see all the videos that ACP has from our webinars, as well as the series of videos on why Catholic publishing matters. So unless I don't see any questions, so I'm going to say thank you to you all, both our speakers as well as our participants. And you will see this video available shortly. You should all get an email about it. If you're interested, there's another webinar on Friday on a content wanting to be free, especially because of things like the internet and Amazon. So you can find that in the calendar at the ACP website at catholicpublishers.org. Thank you all. And I think that concludes our day today. Bye-bye.
Thank you, Therese.
Take care, everyone.
All right. Take care. Bye-bye.